Has come all over the Eastern Caribbean with the great advert of an airline that is Liat. It can often be very troubling, and equally seems to me that everything is running very smoothly. So thank you to all of those behind the scenes. So if we can give a hand to all of those behind the scenes, please. So no witness, no justice. My role in the region is, as Dan has said, is a criminal justice advisor. So why does that criminal justice advisor have to be British? Good question. I don't think that person should be British, but for the time being, they are. So I'm here because it was decided back in Whitehall, in London, that there was a big drug problem with drugs transiting through the Eastern Caribbean. The statistic, and I'm not a major fan of statistics because I believe they can be misinterpreted and used often for bad purposes, but the statistic that was given to me was that 30% of the coke that ends up on the streets in the UK transits through the Eastern Caribbean. So my role here is to increase the capacity, the capability to deal with serious organised crime in the region. You can see it's a difficult task. And one of the difficult reasons is because I sometimes get extremely frustrated. And I'm going to talk about my frustration, and I'll tell you from the outset, and I've only just met Dan, but I think I totally agree, in fact, that we are similar because we're both frank. And I'm going to speak frankly to you about your criminal justice systems and what I have witnessed personally in the last 2 years that I've been here. So, it's a fact. You don't have witnesses, you don't have justice. And as lawyers, we are very bad, but we always do it, and I'm going to do exactly the same. We tell war stories. So I'm going to tell you about a story from my experience when I was defending in the UK. So there was a colleague of mine who was representing a burglar. Not a very nice man. He would go and burgle old people. He would knock on their door. He would ask if they had anything they wanted to sell to him because he was a man of limited means. They would answer. He wouldn't give them an opportunity to go any further, break in, steal whatever he could from them, threaten them. You can imagine. They were known as knockers. The victim, she was a certain age in relation to the particular matter that I'm talking about, and the lawyer defending this knocker said, "Don't worry, Dan, we're going to win this case. The evidence is stacked up against this particular person, but don't worry, she's going to die. She'll die, she's a certain age, we'll just keep on adjourning the case until she gets so frustrated she doesn't turn up, or simply she does pass away." That's not really justice, is it? But I can tell you that that also happens in the Caribbean. I'm aware of an example, not on the same facts of course, but in a court in the region where there were members of the family, associates of the defendant, a murder. A witness was the father. The father was sitting in the same waiting area as those associates and members of the family, simply staring, looking at the father, intimidating him. The father told Crown Counsel, who was looking after the matter, prosecuting it, "I'm not going to wait around, I'm off. I'm going to have my own justice. I don't need to take this." Walked out, the case had to be dropped. It's not the only example, there are other examples as well that I can give you. But as Dan has said, Professor Nemo has said, we live in a global community. What our problems are in the UK translate to the problems that you have in the Eastern Caribbean as well. So this is what I'm trying to say by way of introduction. Just because there's a British guy here doesn't mean that we don't understand the problems that you have, because they're exactly the same in the US, in Canada, in the UK. And what we want to do by this conference, and I welcome this conference because there are many knockers of outreach, of community engagement programs. We're sandal wearers, we're liberals. But the simple fact is, this is one of the most effective ways to try and change the criminal justice system. Okay, who is this? Who's on the screen? I have prizes. Because I want you to remember this presentation, so I'm going to bribe you. So I have prizes. Who's on the screen?
Mr. T!
Yes! Sir, I'm ducking down here because I think you're a large.
Thank you.
T-shirt. I'm going to talk about gimmicks later. Okay, Mr. T. It's all about the bling. Now, one thing that I've certainly seen and witnessed through my interaction with investigators, prosecutors, and also in courts, and also going around the region, is that organised criminals act with impunity. With impunity. The house on the hill. They have a house on the hill. Everybody knows that that person doesn't legitimately work. How have they got that house on the hill? When they go around in their Hummers, when they wear the bling bling. Who are our kids, the young people? Who are they looking up to? Who do they aspire to be if we allow those trappings of criminality to continue? They're looking up to the bad guys. I might be doing Mr. T a disservice, actually, because those of you who remember the A-Team, remember that he was a vigilante who was going around because he was somebody who said that he hadn't committed a crime. So I might be doing him a disservice, but I think he gets the message across. Anybody want to guess how much that bling bling cost him at the time of producing the A-Team? Closest guess gets another prize. In US dollars, how much does bling bling cost? Any guesses?
30,000.
It's not bad, it has got a 3 in it.
325.
Oh, not bad, but you're not getting another one. So we had 325,000. Anybody want to hazard one more guess?
5,000.
Sorry, what was that one?
5,000.
No, it's closer to 325. 300, I think you said 300,000, yes? Yeah, 300,000. How much should that be worth now?
Come on down.
The price is right. I like that. I got my script in future. Okay. Now, one thing that's always said in terms of the criminal justice system is, well, it'll be all right in the future, Dan, because what we'll have will be forensics. But, do you have forensics now?
Yes.
Okay, tell me, what forensics do you have at the moment?
DNA.
Speak loudly. DNA. How often is it used in some kits, please?
Don't know. Okay,
I can tell you, I've studied your Evidence Act 2011, okay? Are there any defence attorneys in the room? You're not brave enough to put your hands up, okay? Because I'm going to tell you that under the Evidence Act 2011, you commit a bad offence, you come in, there are no witnesses, we're going to rely on forensics because we're all singing, all dancing, and we can use forensics. But I can't take them from you. You have to consent. You just say no. And that's it. What are we going to do then? Forensics? What's the point? No witness, no justice, remember. Witnesses are going to be our best source for prosecuting matters. Forensics, I would say, are definitely an answer. But is there the capacity and the capability within the Eastern Caribbean yet? Who's going to pay for it? I can tell you one way to pay for it. That man living on the house in the hill, let's take his ill-gotten gains away from him. Sorry, Dan, hand up.
Sorry. You asked about defense lawyers. I was one. 16 years as a defense lawyer and a criminal and a police officer. I probably had 4 cases where the conviction was registered based on forensic evidence. The vast majority of times the DNA was used in Canada at the time was to clear people that had been wrongly convicted. You don't have the witnesses coming in, you've got nothing.
Absolutely, I hope you all heard that. I would support that in as much as very rarely, when defending, would there be a matter which relied solely upon, for a successful prosecutions, it would be supported by DNA evidence. But again, in what is seen as a cash-rich country, the UK, there would be many cases where we couldn't afford in relation to DNA evidence. DNA evidence would be used in the most serious cases, and those that were more prevalent, taking cars, etc., simply wouldn't be used, couldn't afford it. It's not cost effective. But what is cost effective is when a drug dealer is convicted, is to take away their assets. And there are ways within your legislation that it can be taken away. Something called confiscation. Has it been done in the Eastern Caribbean? I put it out as a question. Has there ever been a confiscation in the Eastern Caribbean? Loaded question. Has there? Bribery? Yes, somebody says yes. Where was it? Incorrect. There was a money laundering conviction recently, which will hopefully lead to confiscation. So halfway there, but incorrect. Has there ever been a confiscation, taking away the bad guys' assets to pay for hospitals, schools? DNA evidence.
Antigua?
Eastern Caribbean.
Antigua?
No. Trinidad. Eastern Caribbean I'm talking about, so not including Trinidad. Antigua, incorrect. Should I tell you the answer? Should I give myself a t-shirt? Sorry, Dan, you said?
Talk.
None. No taking of the bad guys' assets at all to pay for everything. And you know that there are those bad guys for the house on the hill, yes? Okay. So let's take away their assets and pay for the forensics. Frustrations. You can see I'm building up now in terms of my frustration. But I can tell you that I have these discussions with the powers that be. And I say, why are these facilities, these laws that you have had since the 90s in many countries, why are they simply not being used? It gets worse. Let's keep it case specific to witnesses. In one Eastern Caribbean country, there is something called, and we're going to talk about it, a video link. So for vulnerable witnesses, those witnesses can give evidence in a secure location. That facility is in this country. Has it ever been used? No. And I'm told by the Attorney General in that particular country that it's because, and I think Dan's going to laugh at this, the defence would object. But that's what the defence do, I'm afraid. Doesn't mean that they're right. So you can see my frustration when I hear these types of points, that no doubt somebody has paid for that, taxpayer or international donor, and it sits there not being used, whilst vulnerable witnesses, and we include within that those who are embarrassed through sexual offences to give evidence, those who are intimidated, as we saw in that other example within the waiting room, justice is not being served. And we have the facilities here and now to be able to use it. So it's with this frustration that I decided we need a different way to deal with the witness issue. Because I don't need to tell you that there are issues with witnesses, for very good reasons. Often, it's talked about, well, let's get witness protection in the Eastern Caribbean. I can tell you it's just simply not going to happen. It's not cost effective. So you move away the witness, do you move their family with them? Do you provide them with a job? Are they going to stand out and wherever you relocate them to? It may happen on an ad hoc basis, but it's not going to happen case by case by case. There simply isn't the money, and I'd go further, the willing there in relation to it to happen. So with this background, I wanted to reach out to the community to find out what they felt about these types of issues and whether they considered that there were these fundamental flaws with their own criminal justice system that would want them to act and to say this simply isn't good enough. So, thought of many ways because I'm very much, compared to Dan and Professor Nemo, an apprentice of this type of work. It's not, as I would say, my bread and butter. I'm an advocate, defence lawyer turned prosecutor of serious organised crime. I've never done community outreach work in my life, but I wanted to hear what you wanted to say. So, used the power of film and produced a film, and I'm going to show you a short clip in relation to that. And also wanted to engage, because when producing the film, I became, again, slightly frustrated in terms of the adult mentality, i.e. it's not our problem, it is the politicians' problem. Well, it's not, which is another purpose of producing the film. But let's strike it where we can maybe change, and that's the children. So school engagement. And it's with that, you can see on the screen, a blow with a word strikes deeper than a blow with a sword. Because I felt it was very important that we use the arts as well. And we can see that in terms of visual presentations you've seen today. Okay, I'm afraid there are some wordy bits on here, but I wanted to tell you about the specific aims of the No Witness, No Justice project. So we wanted to have a more customer-focused service to witnesses by not only the police, but also the DPP's office and the courts, to get around that issue I highlighted in relation to the witness waiting room. Because when I discussed it with the lawyers, I said, so what was your solution? Well, we didn't have one. Well, you have to decide, if there is this issue, how you can solve it. You cannot allow witnesses just simply to walk out. Enable access to the courts for vulnerable witnesses. I'll talk a little bit about this in terms of special measures and already referred to it. Reduce the rate of ineffective trials. There are a lot of ineffective trials. Witnesses may not be turning up, but delay is a huge problem within the Eastern Caribbean. And also to educate witnesses on systems that are already in place. There are systems in place that are simply not used, as I gave that other example earlier. Okay, so customer-focused service. A witness charter. Victims, we heard through Dan's presentation, in terms of victims having a role within the criminal justice system. It's very important that the Office of the DPP has to remember who they're acting for. And very important because the limited roles are placed in terms of sentencing. Why not have victim impact statements? Use them on a wider basis so that victims can feel a part of the system, and let the sentencing court know exactly how they do feel impacted by the behaviour of somebody breaking into their house. Because that can change their whole way of life. The victim has to live with it for the rest of their life when a personal item of jewellery is stolen from them that they might have inherited from their grandmother. It's lost, it's gone. What does the defendant do? He serves his time and that's it. And gives his pleading story, as I often had to do. The sickening story about what happened to them when they grew up, what's happened to them when they're drug ravaged. But what about the victim? So the Prosecution Witness Charter sets out some basic standards that will be expected of the police and also of the DPP's office. It's a contract between those important persons so they feel important. Now, I want to talk to you about successes because I feel that the way momentum continues in the Eastern Caribbean, there's competition. You hear about one state doing it, why can't we do it? St. Lucia have this, and they're using it actively. And it's handed out to the public and witnesses. Why can't St. Kitts do it? Who's going to lead on it? Who wants to be proactive and say we should have this too? You, the community. You have to reach out and say we want this. Vulnerable witnesses. So special measures and witness anonymity. Special measures, this is what I was saying about the video link. So you have the remote secure location. Special measures, are they used in St. Kitts? No, they're not. Why aren't they used?
They say it's money.
Because it...
They say it's money.
They say it's money, cost. Okay, quite often what I'm told is it has to be in legislation, we have to have it in law. Well, no, you don't. It's about what's being fair and right and proper to get the best evidence. Having said that, in kits, you do have it in your legislation. So, again, why isn't it being used? So it goes to you in terms of money. Yeah, it's about installing the facility. Well, I can tell you that an international donor has provided the money, and you will have that facility in your High Court by the end of this year. So please use it and tell people that that facility is there, because knowledge is power, isn't it not? So please tell people that facility will be there, so they can ask the DPP, can I please give evidence via the link? Now, there are specifics in terms of the legislation, as there always are, but if you don't ask, you don't get. Witness anonymity. Now, what I mean by this is that, say you're in a nightclub and you see an incident happen that leads to a murder, and you're too afraid, having seen what you've seen, to give evidence about it. Small populations, quite understandable. Witness anonymity would allow you to give evidence as Mr. or Mrs. X. You have these provisions in your legislation again, but they haven't been enacted. So they're in the Act, but they're not used. Again, I would say knowledge is power, learn about this. Why? Why is it that these powers are there, but we can't use them? Very, very important, I would say, in small populations. And this is where I'm saying there are alternative solutions to the traditional witness protection. This protects witnesses as well, so let's use what you already have. Okay, improve witness attendance. I mentioned briefly about the film, and I'm going to show you a short part of that film. But I wanted to ask persons on the street, we filmed it in St. Lucia and Barbados, if you saw a crime, what would you do? And the reactions were very mixed, I have to say. Broadly, Barbados wouldn't do anything. St. Lucia, more so. And one of the reasons for that was because they do have a video link facility. And when we were asking persons whether they knew about the video link facility, people did know about it. So even if it changes the mind of just one of those witnesses to actually do the right thing, then surely that has to have advantages. So that's why I say in terms of telling people about your future video link. Okay, education. Another side to this project is in relation to going out to the schools, and I've got a number of the discs and the information packs that I would like to share with you because I'm very grateful for the fact that the US government have decided this is a project they want to run throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. So we'll be coming to a school near you soon. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about it, but this is one of the reasons for this presentation, to alert you to it. Also, I go to UE and regularly update UE and also other jurisdictions. Very important. We have gimmicks as well. I'm not going to hand them out because we have bands too. Yours are better. Yours glow in the dark. But we also have bands as well. It's very important. I'm sure you found exactly the same. The kids love these. And I'm forever doing knocks when I'm out in Barbados with people who have the same band on. And it's just those little bits that get the message out. And very, very important. Because then people ask, why are you doing that? Well, these are the reasons as to why. And about educating people about what is happening. So school engagement. This will enable, again, I'm sorry for the wordy bit, but you can see it, successful learners, confident individuals and responsible citizens. And what do? We do lessons, we show them the film, and then we ask them in terms of what their reaction is to the film. Were they aware of these issues? We give them scenarios that they may face in school, such as bullying, because we want to educate them that they can stand up and reach out, because bullies are often persons who are victims themselves. I read a good quote recently, that justice isn't about punishment, it's about being saved. And when you think about that type of quote, doesn't it resonate? We always focus on the punishment, But maybe we should be focusing more in terms of what the end result is for that person, i.e. rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is so important when they're faced, as Dan has said, in terms of either their victim or a family member who can say about the impact. We're saving that person. And we're also saving the community at large. So please, I think that's a good lesson. We have a graffiti wall as well. I'm sorry about the graffiti reference. But it's very much in a legal school context because we roll out some paper and ask them to write out what they think is the meaning of justice. And then the last part, which again is bringing in the arts, is a role play. And we get the school children to play each part, defence attorney, Crown Counsel, State Counsel, whatever it might be, the defendant, witness, in a role play. We've provided a skeleton, but then they can localise it, they feel part of it, they can direct it, they participate in it. And I can tell you that the impact in relation to that is huge, because they then understand about their criminal justice system. Many persons, for good reasons, haven't stepped into a court of law. But surely we should be introducing our next generation to exactly what the justice system is, so they understand it and are not frightened in relation to it. Because if they have fear, they won't participate. Let's open the justice system up. And again, I've got the key concepts there. You get the school children, they're thinking, they're questioning about why these things should happen as they do at the moment, so that they can develop. And these are very important issues. So change of attitude. That's what we're trying to do. And you can see a photo here where we had the launch of the school engagement project with some of the children who took part. I'd watch out any lawyers in the room, because some of them potentially could be the lawyers of the future, talented. But they enjoyed it as well, ultimately. And when you enjoy something, you learn from it. And it was through this actual launch, which was at the US Embassy. He's very poshly dressed in the middle. You can tell he's British, can't you? It's our Solicitor General, QC, no less. He was very, very posh. But he was a nice chap. And it was through that type of event that we were able to sell to the US Embassy this type of project. And they're now taking it, as I say, on board. So thankfully the apprentice can stand back a little bit. The next stage, who's that on the screen? You must know this. Who's going to answer quickly? Rihanna. Who said, how many people said Rihanna? How can I? How many more? Everybody. Watch out. Everybody. One more.
Straight down the next side, down the next side.
Ready?
Straight down.
Okay. Rihanna, I tell you what, I have no fear. I phoned her up. And I said, would you want to appear in our film? I didn't get to speak to her personally, of course, what a shame. She could have been the next Mrs. Suter. I don't think my wife would have been pleased, but... yeah, I got through to her PA's PA, I think, and I said that what the project was about, and her first question was, will Rihanna be paid? I said no, and that was the end of the conversation. So maybe the No Witness, No Justice film part 2, who knows. But on a serious note, we are going to do a singing competition, because one of the persons you saw in the previous photo, she was, I don't want it to be that I'm doing it, the British person doing it. You won't remember it. Far better if it's in country. So again, watch out for the calypso version, soca version of No Witness, No Justice, who knows? Okay, the film.
If you saw a crime on the street, did you give evidence in court about it?
Police got no work to do, and the guy said that we got work to do.
Recently got violent crime that has gripped the city. Police are this evening probing the execution-style killing of a police operator in the division. Police say they have charged a 16-year-old criminal and an 18-year-old of very from his vehicle in the area of Chiscotty.
Did you give evidence in court about it?
A person can't get a job, and a person comes here and got a little money and he's got you every month. You're going to step up the way and get honest.
Close to me, I appreciate it. Yeah, but otherwise, I don't think so.
Our project is no glitches, no justice.
Most of our cases depend primarily on eyewitness evidence, and that is strong and powerful evidence. And without eyewitnesses, in some cases, we cannot get a conviction.
It is very crucial to every incident that we get persons who will actually come volunteer the information so that the perpetrator can be taken before the courts or brought to justice so that we can identify. Persons started to get involved because they were basically sick of what was happening. Too much was happening. And people wanted ownership. They wanted to take back their community.
So the persons testified against you?
Yes. 3 witnesses testified against me.
I encourage every person on the island in defend the same crime that we should come forward with evidence.
So going back to war story.